Okay, for more on this, Austin Rasmussen is the communications officer for Republicans abroad, and he joins me now from Oslo in Norway. Thanks so much for joining us, Austin. Now, you were here with us at TRT World in Istanbul last year for our election night coverage. At that point, even though you're a Republican, you weren't one of Trump's biggest fans. 1 year later, how do you feel?
Well, no, certainly at that point, I wasn't one of his biggest fans. I did vote for Trump, but my biggest concern at that point was if the election didn't take the course that I anticipated, then, of course, Hillary Clinton would be president. And that, to me, was far more dangerous than a Trump presidency. Now, a year later, looking back, Trump has certainly exceeded my expectations for his first year in office and impressed me with what he's been able to accomplish in that first year.
Okay, tell us more about how Trump has exactly exceeded your expectations.
Well, don't get me wrong. I mean, we do have to separate Trump's rhetoric from his policy, and I think a lot of Republicans are doing that. But when we look at the policy and focus on that and try to define his presidency by his policy rather than his tweets, then he's managed to keep a lot of the promises that he campaigned on, particularly tax reform, tax cuts for individuals, decreasing the corporate tax rate, recognizing Israel as a capital, which is thus enforcing the law that was passed in the 1990s and every president has promised to do going back to Bill Clinton, moving the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, pulling out of the Paris Accord, pulling out of TPP. The stock market is soaring. The economy, if we look at the economy, for example, when they did a poll, Quinnipiac, which is a polling source that both sides often like to source, they asked Americans how confident are they in the economy at the moment. And this was released a couple weeks ago, and over 2/3 of the United States citizens are confident in the economy and the direction that it's going. Now, what that means is about 2 years ago, let's say, when Obama was president and the same poll was conducted, the score was nowhere near 2/3. So Trump is definitely fostering a business environment that's conducive for growth, it's conducive for profit, which means it's conducive for hiring Americans, and it's good for the Americans that are middle class that are working in these businesses. After the tax reform, for example, there are businesses across the country that were announcing new bonus structures and new hiring schemes, and that was a direct result of Trump signing this tax bill.
Austin, but wouldn't you say that the economy is part of Obama's legacy, not Trump's?
No, I wouldn't say that. When Trump came into office, he came into the office under the premise that he was going to be deregulating the business environment, which is what he's done. You look at his executive order, for example, that says for every new regulation that goes into effect, 2 old regulations have to be repealed. This tells businesses that the federal government, at least under Trump, is not going to meddle in their operations and affairs. It allows them to do what they want to do as a private enterprise. So no, I wouldn't attribute this to Obama. In fact, under Obama, the economy was stagnant after the financial crisis. We saw virtually no recovery in his 8 years from the first to the last, comparatively speaking. And then we can look at already in the first year under Trump, and he's setting records not only in the stock market, but in unemployment, for example. No, I wouldn't attribute this to Obama, in short, to answer your question.
Okay, Austin, great to have you on TRT World again. That was Austin Rasmussen from Republicans Abroad in Oslo.